Hi, it's Elissa Weinzimmer, founder of Voice Body Connection, and it is time for another How to Warm Up video.
How to warm up.
In today's video, we're going to cover how to do a laryngeal massage. That means massaging around your larynx or your voice box. Now, when the muscles around your larynx get tight, or even the muscles inside your larynx, they can actually dampen the vibration of your voice. Think about a bell ringing. If you were to put your hands around the bell, it would dampen those vibrations, right? In the same way, your voice box is like a bell ringing, and if the muscles are tight, it dampens the vibrations. So when we release these muscles, it actually allows us to have a more resonant, free sound coming out of us. Now, many people know that you can go to a speech-language pathologist to have a full circumlaryngeal massage done for you. And while that's very important and useful if you're having some deep issues, there's a gentle, simple technique that you can use on yourself at home. Now, just a couple more things before we dive into the full laryngeal massage. One is that some people have a reaction where they touch the front of their throat and they go, "Oh, that's disgusting, I can't handle it." If that's you, if you're having a little bit of a gag reflex, then that's okay. It's actually relatively normal. And you may want to check out the vibrator for your voice exercise, which is also in this series and was in fact created for someone who was having that "I can't touch the front of my throat" feeling. Another thing to acknowledge is that it's really, really imperative that you do this exercise for yourself. Now, the front of the throat, you'll notice if you ever go get a massage that they don't work on the front of your throat. That's because we have the carotid artery and we have other nerves and lymphatic stuff running through this area. So it's really important that we can judge when we're feeling a little bit queasy, when we're feeling like we don't want to proceed, and that we are very gentle and take a break whenever we need to. The only time someone should be doing this exercise for you is if it's a licensed speech therapist. Okay, now that I've given you that disclaimer, let's go ahead and gently dive in. Okay, so step one is that you're going to find your thyroid notch, which is the fancy word for your Adam's apple. And women, yes, we have it too. So find the part where your larynx sticks out just a little bit. Now, the significance of that point is that's where your vocal cords are. They are meeting right behind that point on the inside of the larynx. And by the way, if I use the term vocal cords or vocal folds, they're the same thing. So once you find that spot, go ahead and put a thumb and your other fingers on either side of the spot on the flat cartilage that is called the thyroid cartilage on either side. Okay, step number one is that we're going to take the fingers from up above that point and down below, and we're gently dragging the fingers down, lengthening the muscles that run along the side of the larynx. These muscles are called the strap muscles, and they are strap-like and strap the larynx into place. When they are tight, our larynx will pull up higher in our throat, and when they are loose, our larynx will sit a little bit lower in our throat, which is what we want. You can think about this metaphor. It's almost like your larynx is like the basket of a hot air balloon, and there are strings coming down, and of course, in this metaphor, your head is the hot air balloon, and you want the basket to sit a little bit lower. You don't want it up inside the air balloon, and in fact, there's actually a stabilizing structure, just like in a hot air balloon that has that ring around it. There's a stabilizing structure in there that we'll find as well too in just a moment. So just a couple more times. First step, stroking the muscles down to let the larynx rest lower in the throat. Okay, that is step one of 5. Okay, so now step 2 is actually to wiggle the larynx side to side, because just like the hot air balloon basket being able to sit lower, we also want some freedom for it to wiggle around on those strings that it's on. So you're going to take the same position with your hands, thumb on one side on the thyroid cartilage and fingers on the other side, and you're going to wiggle the whole thing side to side slightly. That may be a little bit crazy, and if you hear a teeny bit of clicking, that's actually okay. The truth is there's 2 cartilages here. There's the thyroid cartilage above, which has those flattish sides, and there's the cricoid, which sits below it, and they're actually sitting right on top of each other. So as you wiggle the whole thing side to side, you may hear them shift a little bit on top of each other. And just be sure to relax your jaw, relax your tongue as you do this whole exercise. Make sure you're also not crunching the back of your neck and that you're sitting up nice and tall for the whole sequence. Okay, and that wiggling side to side is step number 2. Now, steps 3 and 4 involve a bone that is called the hyoid bone. Now, the hyoid bone is that stabilizing structure that we talked about. It's the equivalent of the stabilizer in the hot air balloon. It stabilizes in your throat, and fun fact, it's the only floating bone in the body, which means it's not connected to any other bones. It has muscles above it, it's right about here in your throat, muscles above it that go up into your tongue, and muscles below it which suspend the larynx. So the hyoid bone, when tight, and when the muscles around it are tight, it's going to cause less movement to be capable and possible in the area. So let's loosen up the hyoid bone. Let's find it first. Here's where it is. So the hyoid bone is in the crease where chin becomes neck. If you take your thumb and your finger about 2 inches apart and bring them to either side of that crease and gently search for something that feels bony in there, you may find it. Now yours may be a little bit higher if you're a little more tense, maybe a little lower, maybe a little wider and further back, but just search around very gently to see if you can find something. And when you find it, if you wiggle side to side and you feel it stick out on the other side as you wiggle it, then you know you've found the hyoid bone. And that is indeed the exercise for step 3, which is to gently wiggle the hyoid bone side to side. Now I'm articulating less clearly as I do that because the root of my tongue muscles are attached right to the top of the hyoid bone. So you'll also know that you've got it if you can feel that movement up into the root of your tongue. Great. And then step number 4. Step number 4 is to find the space that is between your hyoid bone and the top of your thyroid cartilage. There's a space that's probably even less than a finger width wide, and if you can find it, you'll just have to sort of squeeze so gently, search around. Once you find it, you're just going to do little teeny circles in that space, trying to create more space in that membranous area between the hyoid bone and the thyroid cartilage. And this is where you don't want to squeeze too tight because you'll notice that it is your windpipe. Now, can you collapse your windpipe easily? Not at all, but it might be where you induce the sort of gag feeling. So gentle, gentle circles here. And that is step number 4. And then the 5th and final step of the full laryngeal massage sequence is to stretch your cricothyroid muscle. Now let me explain. You remember I mentioned that the thyroid cartilage and the cricoid cartilage sit one on top of the other. And here's what happens. As they tilt, it changes the relationship of those two cartilages, which stretches and releases the vocal cords. Now that actually changes your pitch. The muscle that's responsible for tilt and release is the cricothyroid muscle between them right in front. So we can do a very gentle stretch of that muscle, which I think feels really nice. Take 2 fingers 2 inches apart, the other set of 2 fingers on your other hand 2 inches apart, put one set up above your Adam's apple and the other set down below, and then just gently stretch them away from each other apart. You're just getting a gentle drag of the skin away from each other. That's going to gently stretch your cricothyroid muscle, which is quite a small muscle. And if you're having any issues with passaggio, as we call it in singing, or going through your pitch shift, then it can be very, very helpful to stop and do this stage of the exercise. So to review again, those 5 steps are to drag the fingers down the front of the throat, encouraging the larynx to sit lower in the throat. Step 2, to wiggle the whole thing side to side, entire larynx, entire voice box. Step 3, to do a gentle wiggle on either side of the hyoid bone. Step 4, to do the little teeny circles right below the hyoid bone in that space above the top of the thyroid cartilage. And of course, Google image search if you want to see all of this and see what you're touching. And then step number 5, to do the stretch of the front of the cricothyroid pitch muscle. Okay, so those are your 5 steps. Now, when should you practice this? If you experience vocal tension, if you experience fatigue, then this series of exercises is totally for you. So practice it on a daily basis because muscle tension requires some untangling. So the more that you can repeat it, the more you can do it once a day, the more you'll find that things on the front of your throat get more released. However, if you have experienced a lot of hoarseness, intense hoarseness for longer than 2 weeks at a time, or if you've had a sudden change in the quality of your voice, it went from great to really not okay in one day, then you need to get thee to the ear, nose, and throat doctor, okay, please? So go to the ear, nose, and throat doctor, have them scope your vocal cords and make sure that there's nothing going on that's more intense than muscle tension. Now, I know there can be a lot of curiosity and confusion about this area on the front of our throat and what is happening here, especially if something's going on with our voice that feels abnormal or like we haven't noticed it before. So if you have any questions as you practice this full laryngeal massage, please do ask me below the video. Enjoy. I hope this exercise is helpful for you. Remember to be gentle. Remember to do this for yourself, and I will see you in a future How to Warm Up video.
How to warm up.